Welcome back to Green Island Gardens. Continuing our series today of the 10 best plants in different categories. Today it's my 10 favourite Acers. You can see standing behind me this beautiful, beautiful small tree, Acer japonicum Aconitifolium. Acer japonicum meaning it comes from Japan, so it is one of the Japanese maples, but very different to the palmatum cultivars. It has larger, much larger leaves, and they're very, very deeply divided. And each one is lobed and has sort of feathery edges, really beautiful leaves. It produces an elegant open branching specimen, and it tends to colour very early on. So even from August, the leaves will start taking on their autumnal colours, and right through September, and then peaking sort of second or third week in October. It's one of the fairly early ones, but in my opinion, one of the very best cultivars that you can choose. This is another lovely Acer palmatum cultivar, but unlike most of my selections, it doesn't colour orange and red in the autumn. This one is called Acer palmatum senkaki or Acer palmatum sangukaku. Two different names, but both mean exactly the same tree, which is called, the common name is the coral bark maple. Reason for that is when it is without its leaves in the middle of winter, particularly through into February, March time, all the shoots and stems glow the most gorgeous bright red colour, and it makes a real picture against a clear blue February sky. Absolutely gorgeous. It's also particularly effective planted next to water where you can see reflections. It does still have beautiful colour during the summer season, a bright, fresh, greeny yellow colour, and then it does colour to an orangey yellow colour in the autumn before the leaves fall. But definitely one for a different time of year to choose. Here we have what I consider to be the best bright lime greeny yellow coloured cultivar. This is Acer Shirasawanum aureum. It used to be called Acer japonicum aureum, but the powers that be have changed it for whatever reason, and it's now a Shirasawanum. And again, you can see the leaves are a very distinctive shape, very different to the palmatum and Aconitifolium cultivars. And common with all Shirasawanums, it tends to make a quite upright growing specimen. It's not wide and spreading like a lot of the other Acers. The other thing to note about these golden leaved cultivars is they're best in part shade. They don't colour brilliantly in the autumn anyway, so you're not losing out by not having it in full sun. But the yellowness of the leaves leaves them a little bit vulnerable and susceptible to scorching by the end of the summer, particularly if it's very dry. You will get a little bit of colour on them in a good season, but anyway, this is one of the ones I would recommend. And then the next two I'm going to show you are cultivars of this. So this is a cultivar of Acer Shirasawanum. This one is called August Moon. It has beautifully shaped leaves, and the new ones, when they come into growth, are beautiful colour as well. The markings continue throughout the year, and it will colour up in the autumn, but probably only to a sort of orange, and maybe you'll get a little bit of red if you're lucky. But it forms a lovely specimen, a lovely one again to grow in a pot. If I can just try and reach down some of these tallest leaves. You can see how they're just beginning to colour up. But in here you can see a couple of the really new leaves, and that gives you an idea of the spring colour of the growth as it comes into leaf in the spring. So long season of interest and different colours in the leaves. And the final cultivar I'm going to show you of the Acer Shirasawanum is this one, Moonrise. Beautifully shaped leaves, again very similar to Acer Shirasawanum aureum, but this one has red leaves almost permanently. That's probably partly because it's growing in a pot here, and it did suffer a little bit in the drought, but nevertheless it's a really beautiful specimen. And again, you can see it has that typical upright habit of a Shirasawanum hybrid. There are lots of purple-leaved Acers. They all colour beautifully in the autumn, but rather than going for straight Acer palmatum atripurpureum, I would choose this one. This cultivar is called Bloodgood. It forms a slightly more spreading tree than the straight Acer palmatum. The leaves are slightly bigger, more voluptuous if you like. Palmate again, 7-lobed, but they colour to the most beautiful bright red crimson colour in the autumn. So I think this is a really good choice if you want a purple-leaved cultivar. This is a stunning Acer. Acer palmatum, Atripurpureum, Dissectum. So our classic Acer palmatum, Japanese maple. Atripurpureum, it has purple leaves, and then Dissectum, the leaves are finely divided, giving this feathery appearance. Any of the cultivars that end with Dissectum at the end of the name, you can tell it means they're going to have this lovely domed upside down umbrella shape, very typical of the Dissectums. Again, these are meant to be slow growing, so ideal for a pot. And I first saw this one on the rock garden in Kew Gardens about 30 years ago. Bought myself one and planted it in a pot. We brought it here to Green Island. And when we created this seaside garden, I wanted a focal point in the middle. And I never imagined beyond my wildest dreams it would grow to this size. It's taught me all I know about growing acers, and a lot of what you read in the books is actually a myth. You will be told they need to be grown in part shade and also in acidic soil. This one has neither of those things, but what it does have is a constant moisture supply to the roots. This garden here is low maintenance. It's got a membrane over the top of the soil and then a gravel mulch, which keeps the moisture in right through the summer. It keeps the roots nice and moist in the winter and warm as well. And this one is in full sun. It faces south, so it gets the fullness of the hot, scorching sun in the middle of the summer. And we never get that horrid scorching on the edge of the leaves. So that's the really important factor when siting an Acer. And remember, if you plant it in full sun like this one, you'll get much better autumn colour. These are also suitable for growing in pots where the growth will be a little bit more restricted, effectively bonsaiing them over the years. Sadly, we now have to prune this one each year, but we just about managed to do it in the winter when the leaves are all off it and we can see what we're doing, so you can't actually see that we're taking too much off it. But generally, I don't recommend pruning acers at all because they just grow in the most elegant, natural shape without any training or encouragement. This is Acer griseum. The paperbark maple is its common name. So something a little different to the Japanese maples grown purely for their autumn colour. The leaves are attractive, trifoliate, so 3 lobes, lovely green colour all summer, and then they do colour beautifully in the autumn. But it's not for the autumn foliage colour this is grown. It's grown for the beautiful peeling cinnamon coloured bark which peels back after the leaves have all fallen, and it reveals this lovely coloured bark all winter. So it makes it a really good ornamental tree, specimen tree for all year round. It's reasonably slow growing. It will reach a height of maybe 10 metres in about 100 years, but it's best to buy a decent sized specimen if you're going to feature this in your garden. Another one which likes a moist but well-drained position, as with all acers, but definitely one to consider for all year-round interest. This is Acer palmatum Osakazuki, another one of my favourites for a specimen tree as a focal point. It has lovely, huge palmate leaves. You see the size of this, typical of the palmatum, but not too deeply divided. It has lovely red seeds that persist for a long time in the summer after it's flowered. And then in the autumn, it's a sort of mid-season one that colours up beautifully, usually 2nd, 3rd week in October, but this year it's really late, but absolutely gorgeous. The one to my left here is slightly further on, and you can see that's because it's a smaller tree and it hasn't got quite as established with its root development as these ones on the right. Nevertheless, a lovely tree to choose. There are 2 questions that visitors ask me to Green Island about my acers. One of them is how many different cultivars do I have? And the other one is which is my favourite Acer. Both questions I refuse to answer, simply because I don't know how many I have and I wouldn't like to dare count. And secondly, because asking somebody to name her favourite Acer for me is like asking a mother to name her favourite child. However, if I'm really pushed and I had to choose one Acer that I wouldn't be without, it would be this one, Acer palmatum Chishio. She has the most beautiful, elegant, spreading shape, dome-shaped. So even in the winter, without her leaves, she carves a beautiful silhouette in the garden. In the spring, when she comes into leaf, she has the foliage is the most beautiful, pretty, dusky pink colour, which makes a beautiful foil against the background of the Photinia red robin hedge in its new growth. In the summer, the foliage matures to a sort of orangey browny colour, and still the seed heads are very prominent, bright red seed heads through the summer months. And then in the autumn, from about mid-October, the leaves start taking on their autumn colours. So these beautiful fiery orange red colours, until finally by the end of October into November this year, everything's very late, she just looks like a bonfire glowing at the end of the garden. Will grow really well in a pot as well, but if you have got room for it, definitely worth the space for a spectacular specimen. Beni Maiko, another Acer palmatum cultivar. Lovely small spreading tree. Has lovely red stems, and the foliage when it comes into leaf in the spring is absolutely spectacular. I think it's actually the best time of year for Beni Maiko is in the spring, whereas most Acer palmatums come into their full glory in the autumn. But this one for me is best in the spring, so April into May. Bright red stems, as I said, pinky red foliage in the spring, matures to this green colour, and then it will colour in the autumn, but it's one of the later ones and I wouldn't pick it out as the most spectacular for autumn. It has very small, neat leaves and a sort of compact habit, so it does make a good specimen for a pot. This one was originally in a pot in the Japanese garden where we now have Shaina growing, but after about 10 years she outgrew the pot, so we took her out and planted her here, where she really does look lovely. This is my final choice for my favourite 10 Acers. It's one that I'm asked most often about by garden visitors. It's called Acer palmatum Shaina. She's quite a small, compact plant. This one has been in this pot now for a good 10 years. It makes an ideal specimen for a pot because she doesn't grow too quickly or too big. Nice, compact shape, really intense red leaves, quite small, deeply divided leaves, and then it goes this beautiful fiery red in the autumn. So this is my final choice. I would say that it's a little bit tricky to get it away to begin with. It doesn't like to sit too wet in the winter. So until the root ball gets to a decent size, make sure you don't put it in too large a pot too quickly. That's my best tip for this one. But if you can get it away, it really is magnificent in a pot. So once again, thank you very much for watching our video. We have all the Acers that we featured today for sale in our nursery, and we do offer mail order. But thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe our channel.